Today, we're talking about the hidden levers of profitability, specifically 5 operational signals that most practices miss, why they're so easy to overlook, and why they matter far more than simply seeing more patients. One of the biggest misconceptions in medical practice management is that profitability is primarily a financial issue, that if revenue is lagging, the solution must live in payer mix, fee schedules, or adding volume. But in reality, profitability is an operational outcome. The financial statements are simply reporting what operations have already decided. Most practices look at their income statement. Fewer understand the behaviors and systems underneath it. And that's where these levers live. Welcome to Medical Money Matters, the podcast where you can find experts, answers, and resources so that you can achieve mastery over the financial and business aspects of your practice. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Jill Arena. I began my career in accounting and finance, and I have more than 30 years of experience running medical groups. I own and operate a national healthcare consulting and revenue cycle company, and I am the author of Physician Heal Thy Financial Self. In 2020, I co-founded the Physician Leadership Project, and in 2025, I released Physician's Edge, the first of its kind CME-accredited online business education for physicians. My passion is to increase financial and business literacy for physicians. Episode 169, The Hidden Levers of Profitability. 5 operational signals most practices miss. If you talk to most physicians about their practices, you'll hear a familiar refrain. We're busy. Our schedules are full. We're seeing more patients than ever. And yet, in the very next breath, many of those same practices will say something else that feels contradictory. Margins feel tight. Cash flow is unpredictable. It doesn't feel like the numbers reflect how hard we're working. That disconnect is where today's conversation begins. Because truly profitable practices don't usually feel chaotic or confusing, and struggling practices aren't usually struggling because of a lack of demand. More often than not, profitability, or the lack of it, is being driven by a handful of operational signals that are hiding in plain sight. Today, we're talking about the hidden levers of profitability, specifically 5 operational signals that most practices miss, why they're so easy to overlook, and why they matter far more than simply seeing more patients. One of the biggest misconceptions in medical practice management is that profitability is primarily a financial issue, that if revenue is lagging, the solution must live in payer mix, fee schedules, or adding volume. But in reality, profitability is an operational outcome. The financial statements are simply reporting what operations have already decided. Most practices look at their income statement. Fewer understand the behaviors and systems underneath it. And that's where these levers live. Let's start with provider capacity utilization. Many practices believe they understand this lever because schedules appear full. Providers are booked weeks in advance. The waiting room is busy. Phones are ringing. On the surface, it looks like capacity is maximized. But when we look closer, a different picture emerges. No-shows that quietly eat away at the day. Appointment templates that don't match visit complexity. Short visits scheduled next to long ones with no buffer. Providers spending time on tasks that don't require their level of training. Capacity utilization isn't about how busy the day feels. It's about how effectively provider time is converted into appropriate, billable clinical work. Underutilized provider time is one of the most expensive inefficiencies in a practice because provider compensation is a fixed cost, whether that time is optimized or not. This signal is often missed because the pain isn't obvious. A half-empty hour doesn't trigger alarms the way a staffing shortage does. But even small improvements in utilization, better templating, smarter scheduling, reduced no-shows, can materially improve profitability without asking physicians to work harder or longer. The second lever is staffing cost alignment to volume. Labor is the largest controllable expense for most medical practices, and yet staffing decisions are often made emotionally or historically. This is how we've always staffed. We added people when we were busy. We don't want to overwork the team. All of those are understandable, but what often gets missed is whether staffing levels still align with current demand. Headcount tends to grow during periods of expansion, but rarely contracts when volume softens or workflows improve. Over time, even modest overstaffing quietly erodes margins. This signal is missed because practices rarely benchmark staffing by role or by visit. Without those reference points, inefficiency feels normal. The result is a practice that's either overstaffed and unprofitable, or understaffed and burning people out. Neither is sustainable. When staffing is aligned to volume, practices gain flexibility. They can absorb fluctuations without panic. Profitability becomes more predictable, and the work environment becomes more stable. The third lever is coding accuracy and revenue integrity, and this is where we see some of the most consistent missed opportunities. Many practices assume their coding is, quote, fine, quote, because claims are being paid. But payment does not equal accuracy. In fact, one of the most common patterns we see is systematic undercoding, not because physicians don't provide the care, but because documentation habits, fear of audits, or outdated coding education suppresses legitimate revenue. Coding is often viewed as a back-office function, disconnected from profitability. Physicians focus on patient care. Coders focus on claims. No one owns the full picture. Common issues show up repeatedly. E&M services consistently leveled lower than the documentation supports. Inconsistent use of time-based versus medical decision-making coding. Missing or misused modifiers. Documentation that is clinically sound but fails to clearly support complexity. Providers who never receive individualized feedback, so patterns never change. Each of these issues feels small in isolation, but multiplied across thousands of encounters, the impact is significant. Undercoding creates permanent margin loss that volume cannot fix. You can't outwork a systemic revenue integrity problem. Accurate coding doesn't mean aggressive coding. It means consistent, compliant coding that reflects the work already being done. When practices address this, they often see meaningful improvement in revenue without adding a single visit. And just as importantly, consistency reduces audit risk by making coding defensible and predictable. The fourth lever is revenue leakage in the back office. You're listening to Medical Money Matters, a weekly podcast brought to you by Healthy Practices, a healthcare consulting and revenue cycle company dedicated to keeping our clients independent. If you're looking for more ways to strengthen your business skills, check out Physician's Edge, our mini MBA online course designed to help physicians master the financial side of their practice. You can find that and more about how we support practices like yours at healtheps.com. That's www.healtheps.com. And don't forget to follow or subscribe so you never miss a new episode. Revenue leakage refers to the money that should be collected but isn't, or isn't collected in a timely way due to breakdowns in billing, follow-up, and collections. Copays that aren't collected at the time of service. Denials that aren't worked aggressively. Claims that sit in accounts receivable too long. Write-offs that are accepted without analysis. This lever is often missed because revenue looks okay at a high level. Money is coming in. Payroll is being met. The practice survives. But when we look deeper, we often find that a surprising amount of revenue never makes it to the bottom line. Physicians rarely see this because revenue cycle data is complex and fragmented. Without clear reporting, leakage blends into the background. But over time, it creates cash flow instability and masks true performance. Fixing leakage is often one of the fastest ways to improve profitability. Unlike growth initiatives, which take time, tightening revenue cycle processes can produce relatively quick results and reduce financial stress. The fifth lever is overhead rigidity versus flexibility. Every practice has fixed costs. That's unavoidable. But the degree to which overhead can adapt to changes in volume varies widely. Long-term leases, inflexible staffing models, and legacy vendor contracts can lock practices into cost structures that no longer fit the current reality. This signal is missed because overhead is often treated as the cost of doing business. Once a lease is signed or a vendor is chosen, it's mentally filed away as unchangeable. Growth can hide these inefficiencies for years, but when volume plateaus or declines, rigid overhead magnifies risk. Practices with more flexible cost structures weather market changes far better. They can adjust, pivot, and protect margins. Over time, flexibility becomes a strategic advantage. The final lever is decision-making lag time. This is one of the most underestimated drivers of profitability. It's not just what you know, it's how quickly you act on it. Many practices review data monthly or quarterly. Reports exist, but no one owns them. Signals are noticed but not addressed because they feel temporary, or groups are unsure what to do about them. The problem is that delayed decisions increase financial impact. Small inefficiencies become expensive ones. By the time action is taken, the cost is much higher than it needed to be. Practices that shorten the gap between signal and response consistently outperform those that don't. Faster insight leads to faster course correction and better margins. When you step back and look at all of these levers together, a common theme emerges. These are not clinical failures. They are operational blind spots. They don't reflect poor medicine or lack of effort. They reflect systems that haven't been fully examined. Profitability is not about squeezing more work out of physicians. It's about aligning operations with reality. It's about leadership having clear visibility into how the practice actually functions, not just how it feels. At Healthy Practices, this is exactly what our profitability assessments are designed to uncover. Not just whether a practice is profitable, but why. We look at operational, financial, and coding data together to identify where opportunity exists and where risk is hiding. Because we work with hundreds of practices across specialties and markets, we see patterns. These levers repeat themselves, and when they're addressed intentionally, improvement becomes predictable. Profitability doesn't require heroics. It requires insight. If there's a takeaway from today's conversation, it's this. Most practices don't have a revenue problem. They have a visibility problem. And once you know where to look, profitability becomes far less mysterious. Until next time. You can find more information online at medicalmoneymatterspodcast.com, and you can sign up to be notified when enrollment opens for the Medical Money Matters e-learning program for a mini MBA physician style, which will carry CME credits and will be released in upcoming months. In that, we'll do an even deeper dive so you can understand dynamic budgeting strategies, cash flow forecasting, and other more esoteric financial concepts. We've included those links in the show notes. As I like to close out these podcasts, congratulations on taking the next step in your professional development and for making the commitment to learn about the financial and business aspects of your practice. I look forward to being on this journey with you and send you my heartfelt gratitude for all that you do for your patients all day, every day.